Oh, there it is. From Calexico to Nunavut, from the Aleutian Islands to Newfoundland, and through Colorado Springs, Colorado, we have the continent covered. This is the Dynasty Pulse. Thank you for coming in. We got a special guest today. His name is Dave Kluge. Tell him what you're about, Dave, and where people can find your stuff.
Yeah, it's real easy. You can find all my stuff over at Football Guys. That's funny. People used to ask me that, and I was like, I'm doing this show on this network on this day, and I'm doing this over here, and I'm doing this article on this website. And now it's just footballguys.com. Really easy. You can find all my content there. You can follow me on Twitter at Dave Kluge, where I'm constantly sharing the content that I'm making. I will admit, this time of year, I kick back a little bit. It's a long season, and we still got a long off season ahead of us. So this is the time of year where I like to recharge my batteries a little bit. But man, we're 48 days away from the draft now. It's going to be here before we know it. Sitting back and diving into these rookie prospects here and having some fun with it.
Dynasty never sleeps. And you can find my stuff at BigBonedFFB on Twitter. I also have the Fantasy Burn on YouTube and over here at the Dynasty Pulse. And you can find my stuff at the Undroppables. And yeah, I just need one consolidated thing. And Mike Greinberg, of course, also a player profiler on the news desk with me and at the Undroppables. I would let him share that, but I'm just going to hit the intro. And it's at FFCanuck99 on Twitter, for those of you who were still wondering. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe, share it around, comment in the comment section. We'll answer any questions that you guys have. We'll answer those next week. We have a great show. As always, we're going to bring you the weekly breaking news, because that's what we do best. And we also have our Combine risers and fallers. Combine happened last weekend, and some guys helped their draft stock. Some guys they're looking a little bad now. A couple of wait and see guys didn't do so hot. A couple of guys blew us away. So We'll get into all that real quick. But as I like to say, here's Greinberg with the news.
Hold on. Here we go.
Job producer.
So we're gonna. Thank you. That was pretty slick. So we're gonna go over like maybe 5 guys, 5 situations potentially, some news happening here, and the biggest one of the day. Let's go about right now.
Mr. President, happy birthday to you.
You got me. It was yesterday. Stop it. All right. Thank you so much for that. By the way, I just want to plug, I'm doing stand-up at the Punchline in Sacramento on June 1st. So that is the newest thing at the first day of the rest of my life. So any of you in the area, get tickets for that. I'm opening for Billy Wayne Davis. So
that's awesome.
I don't know why I thought of that. Thank you, Mike.
Happy birthday. I just made you blush there. So that was a big moment for me here. So we're going to talk about some free agent preview here. We've got a couple big name wide receivers that have been franchise tagged, and Michael Pittman and T. Higgins. But we have one notable signing, and that's Mike Evans signs a 2-year, $52 million deal. Huge money here, $35 million guaranteed. This deal all but solidifies Evans finishing his Hall of Fame career as a Buccaneer. Evans is headed into his 11th season in the league. Evans will be looking at going at his 11th straight 1,000-yard season. Wow, that's incredible. No signs of slowing down at all. Evans finished 2023 with 1,255 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns on 79 receptions. Great news for Evans and all the Buccaneers fans out there. Now they just got to get Baker Mayfield's back signed. What do you guys think about that signing? I think it's great news.
Dave, I think everyone go ahead.
No, Dave.
Yeah, it's great news. Like you said, he's probably going to finish his Hall of Fame career in Tampa Bay. I think this is what everybody in Tampa Bay wanted to see. A good friend of mine, Joey Wright, is a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, and he was just beyond upset at the thought of Mike Evans playing for another team.
Yeah.
What this does, unfortunately, though, and I'm sure we'll get to the franchise tagged players as well, there are almost no notable free agent wide receivers hitting the market now. Mike Evans was the guy that we were hoping, like, oh, maybe he'll go play with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, elevate one of these already very good offenses. And that has just completely sucked the market dry now. There's nobody really. In today's NFL, you don't see these premier wide receivers hit the market often. If you do, it's 32-year-old Julio Jones or 31-year-old DeAndre Hopkins. And I think a lot of people thought Mike Evans might follow that path, but clearly the Bucs think that he still has enough left in the tank that they want to bring him back.
Yeah, it's great. It was basically the first domino that needed to fall for them to re-sign Baker Mayfield, which is something that they were definitely interested in doing. So I think it's not that they put Baker on the back burner. I think they knew that it would incentivize Baker if they went and signed Mike Evans first. At some point, we have to bet against him hitting 1,000 yards, but I'm not prepared to be the first one to do that this year.
I bet against Mike Evans 3 years ago.
Yeah, he's been an absolute revelation. Always a really, really good value in Dynasty in startup drafts and stuff. A great value this year last year in the Scott Fish Bowl. So look for that again in the SFB 14. I did hear some prognostication from Johnny Manziel that Mike Evans was probably going to sign with the Texans, but that didn't. I was hoping for that because I thought him going to Stroud would be a pretty fun thing to watch. But
Stroud's
glad it didn't happen.
He's got enough going for him already.
And I'm glad Mike's back in Tampa. Being old like I am, my birthday was yesterday, so I'm a year older. Even being old like I am, one of the things that I miss is guys playing their entire careers with one organization, regardless of the sport. It's just, it makes everything better. And it's good to see Evans going back to Tampa.
Agreed. So let's get into some free agents here. And the number one free agent is Kirk Cousins. Age 35, he'll be turning 36 in August, has spent the last 6 seasons in Minnesota and has become one of the faces of the organization. Fresh off his Achilles tear, there's a lot up in the air, hearing rumors of swirling that he may be going to Atlanta. Who knows at this stage? We have the Vikings, we have Atlanta as the front runners. The Patriots are also in the mix now. Hearing the Broncos and Raiders and Commanders are all in the market for Cousins. I don't think the Commanders will go there with their draft capital, but where does he go, guys? Where do we think he's going? Dave, we'll start with you.
I think it's got to be Atlanta. That seems like it's the betting favorite right now. The line has moved pretty significantly post-Combine. And I don't know if you guys saw, Kevin O'Connell was actually on the TV broadcast during the NFL Combine, and he said something that really stuck out to me. He said, Kirk Cousins has earned the right to be a free agent. And I think that's the correct way, maybe the PC way to say we've seen enough from Kirk Cousins. They've been together for a few years now. I think Kevin O'Connell's looking to bring in somebody younger, somebody a little bit more moldable. Kirk Cousins is a fine quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think that he's probably right around that top 10, top 12 bubble, but I think they're looking for somebody that can compete with the Josh Allens and the Patrick Mahomeses and the CJ Strouds. And I don't know if they think that Kirk Cousins can be that guy. Minnesota's been tied to a lot of rumors. The Justin Fields potential trade partner. As soon as Russ Wilson hit the market, they said that they were interested in Russ Wilson. Talking about trading for Trey Lance. I don't know if you saw that. So I think they're doing anything possible besides wanting to bring Cousins back. And then, of course, Cousins' wife is from Atlanta and kids go to school there and just bought a house there. It seems like the stars are aligning. And man, I'd love it. We've been holding on to these Drake London shares and these Kyle Pitts shares for years, just waiting. And what you did for Justin Jefferson, Kirk, I want you to do that for my London and Pitts shares. So please, maybe I'm just wish casting this, but that's what I want to see happen.
Yeah, I think Justin Jefferson is pretty much quarterback proof. But other than that, I think he goes back to Minnesota. I think he wants to test the market, and I don't think that he has value, but I don't think he's going to get a free agent contract that's going to blow Minnesota out of the water. And it's always good to have continuity, and I think he goes back to Minnesota. Although I would rather see him in Atlanta than Justin Fields. But yeah, wheels up on JJ again. Addison, Hawkinson when he comes back. Just put Kirk back in the building. They can put it together if he's still there.
Cool. Yeah, I think so too. So we'll talk about here. I'm going to just group up a couple guys here. We talked about some guys that got franchise tags. So Michael Pittman and T. Higgins. We all know that those deals are pretty good deals for them and their teams. But what happens now with that free agent landscape? Calvin Ridley now maybe becomes the most sought after free agent. He had a really good season last year. Where do we go from here? Do you think either of those teams move off of Pittman or Higgins in a move, or is Calvin Ridley going to be the guy now? That's going to be the sought after free agent.
Yeah, I think it's going to be him. Marquise Brown is another guy that if you're bringing in Calvin Ridley, you're probably not looking at anything more than like a 1 year, 2 year deal, where Marquise Brown still might have a lot of leverage where he can get a 3-4 year deal, but he's also still young enough that he can go out and take a 1 year prove it deal. But yeah, it's like I said, with these guys getting tagged, there really isn't much of a wide receiver market. Luckily, this draft class is dripping with wide receiver talent. So teams that want to beef up their wide receiver room are going to have to do it through the draft, maybe through trades. But you talked about Mike Pittman, and that's one where I think a lot of people are excited because of how good he was last year. I think I'm on the opposite side of the fence there. I wanted to see Pittman go somewhere else. So much of his production last year came with Gardner Minshew when they were consistently playing from behind, and we averaged twice as many points per game with Gardner Minshew than he did with Anthony Richardson. I think when Richardson is the quarterback, there's going to be less pass volume to go around. It's going to be slower. They're going to run the ball a lot more, meaning that there's going to be less plays overall. And I get it. He was a rookie last year starting the season, but he only averaged 8.3 PPR points per game and significantly fewer targets per game. So I like Michael Pittman, the player. The game theory take here, if at the midway point of the season he's not doing well, I'm going to go out and try to buy Michael Pittman if I can get him for low, but he's not somebody that I'm really interested in acquiring right now because it seems like people are excited about this franchise tag, and I feel the complete opposite.
Same, and I'm all in on Josh Downs because he had much better numbers with Anthony Richardson, and even though I forgot his name, the other guy,
Alec Pierce.
Yeah, even though Alec Pierce is the kind of deep threat, Anthony Richardson can chuck the ball 85 yards down the field. We didn't see a lot of that. I don't think that they were ready to institute that in the game plan. But I think that moving forward, it was a surprise for me that they tagged Pittman, because moving forward with Downs and Pierce seems like that could be a good play in Indy, especially with Richardson's arm. But yes, Pittman, 1 more year, hold off. He'll keep his value static for about a year. But again, just like Dave said, if he's lagging halfway through the year, he's a huge buy.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, now we're going to talk about 2 running backs that are free agents right now coming off franchise tags, and that's Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs. I'm grouping them together because they were grouped together last year. Very similar situations. Personally, I prefer the younger Jacobs in this situation as far as free agents go. Barkley's got a little bit more wear on tear on his body coming off an ACL in 2021. Hearing rumors that Barkley is being looked at by the Eagles, I think that's a very interesting landing spot for him. We'll start with you there, Biggs. What do you think about Barkley in Philly?
I love the tweet today. I forgot who put it out there, but somebody said something about waiting 5 years for Barkley to completely take over. He finally comes back in Philly to have 20 goal line touches taken away from him by Jalen Hurts.
That was me.
That was you? That's right. That was fantastic. That my favorite tweet of the day. I read a lot of them. I don't always look at the person who it is.
Awesome.
But yeah, that was the best take. My Saquon shares I do not want going to Philly. I can't think of a lot of places where I'd like to see him, because I don't think at this point he's going to really take over another backfield. He's hitting that age and contract point, just like a lot of the guys that we've been talking about for the last year, Dalvin Cook, these guys that hit that 27, 28 years old off their rookie contract after a tag and a couple of free agent years. It's time for him to have that backup role, and it's sad. So I've been shopping him. I don't think he's going to be a top 12 running back again. If he goes to Philly, he's going to be in a mixed backfield with DeAndre Swift, So there aren't really a lot of spots where he has a whole lot of upside.
Yeah, if you look at his efficiency profile from last year, there really wasn't much to get excited about. The only thing that kind of kept his fantasy value afloat for some of these weeks was his volume in the pass game, and that could certainly still be there if he goes to another team, but it was the weighted opportunities that kept his value afloat last year. He wasn't especially efficient, so I think you really hit it on the head here. 27 years old. That's when we see these running backs fall off. And it's not typically a gradual, like slowly getting worse and worse and worse. These guys fall off hard, and he's got the wear and tear on his body. He's got the injury history. I'd like to see just from like a football standpoint, I think Saquon Barkley in Houston would be a lot of fun. That's the one thing they were missing last year was a running back. But I think what's going to happen is he's going to sign somewhere. People are going to get excited. That's going to shoot his ADP up. And I know this is a dynasty show, but I could see it where he lands with Philly or he lands with Dallas or he lands with Houston. And in redraft, he's going at the 1-2 turn, early second round. And I just can't stomach that sort of ADP. So great player. He's had a great career when he's been healthy, but it's going to be really tough to see me buying into Saquon Barkley going into next season.
Especially in Philadelphia, but also this Devin Singletary slander shall not stand. No,
He was great last year.
I don't care about Devin Singletary or Dameon Pierce. Just get rid of, bring Saquon in. He would look great in Houston. But again, it would be so hard to bank on him. Now, Josh Jacobs, on the other hand, I have inside sources that say he's going to, regardless of the testing the market, whatever, he's going to resign with Las Vegas. I do not want him to go to Chicago. I don't think anybody who owns Roschon Johnson wants him to go to Chicago. I don't think anybody wants him to go to Chicago. He should be going back to the Raiders. However, I will have him ranked, of course, higher than Saquon Barkley because he doesn't have the two major injury issues. He has the ticky-tack injury stuff. For the first time last season, he missed some time. But he's getting older, and he's perfect for that Raiders backfield. Give Zaire the rock, Josh Jacobs too, have him split carries, both be efficient. That's the perfect storm, in my opinion, for Jacobs.
Yeah, we talk about these two, but there's also Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, Zach Moss, Singletary, CEH, AJ Dillon, J.K. Dobbins, and then Bill Barnwell just came out with an article talking about the guys he expects to be released, and that's Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara. There is going to be a huge influx of veteran running backs hitting the free agency market. And I feel every year we get excited about these guys and, finally, this running back that I've liked for years is going to get his opportunity with the team, and it rarely works out. We just see these young guys now stepping into roles, these guys on rookie contracts that you might have never even heard of before being the guys. It's going to be really hard for me to buy into any of these veterans going into next season.
I just went and found Chase Brown in as many leagues as I possibly could, picking him up off the waiver wire and sending trades. We've been talking about Joe Mixon for a while, since the end of last year, and examining his contract status at Spot Track, and he definitely was. It was the Bengals are incentivized to release him. Rumors just started flowing a couple days ago, but we've been talking about that for a long time. And again, that's the RB market. It's a new age of tight ends. It's a new age of wide receivers, and it's a new age of running backs. There's just no Derrick Henry. What are we going to do with Derrick Henry? He's one of the goats.
Overdrafted when he signs with Baltimore or a team that people get excited about, and he's going to get overdrafted. But,
right.
We play Dynasty the same way. All these names you're talking about, I'm going to start up right now, and I just spent my 12th, 13th, and 14th round picks on Roschon Johnson, Zamir White, and Chase Brown. I'm just going to draft the young guys because they are going to find themselves in a relevant starting role at some point this season.
I'm bereft. I can't believe I called my own running back Zaire. I meant Zamir. I was gonna say Zeus, and then Zaire came out. I don't even know why. Yeah, and the most frustrating thing, especially in Dynasty, is that you have these guys that they have good profiles. They can be productive. They're not necessarily the bell cow profile. Like I had Ken Gainwell for a couple years, just waiting for him to get his chance. Or you watch a guy and you know that he's the elite in the backfield, but the veteran gets the carries over him. And we wait on these guys forever, and every backfield is split. And somebody invested heavily in Ken Walker 1 year, and then Charbonnet comes in the next. Like it's running back has taken over tight end as the most frustrating position in dynasty leagues, and I'm not here for it.
All right.
I hate it.
What we are here for, though, is the combine results here. And it was a really
You're not even
exciting
going to talk
weekend.
about Jonnu Smith?
No, we're not talking about Jonnu Smith. We're even going to skip over Baker Mayfield because I got a good feeling he's going to be in Tampa. The writing's on the wall after the Mike Evans signing, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
There. So let's get into the combine and some risers and fallers. It was a great weekend. Like a lot of entertainment there. The 40 was a lot of fun to watch. The gauntlet, I think Romo Dunze is still running it right now, trying to break that record. We shall see. But let's get into some risers and fallers. We'll start with Kluge. Kluge, let's talk about your 2 risers.
I'll go ahead and start with the layup here as my combine riser. Xavier Worthy went out and broke the all-time record for the 40-yard dash with 4.21 seconds. And it's hard to talk about him as a riser because I think a lot of people already had him pegged as a first-round pick going into the combine, but I think he completely solidified that right now. Now, there might even be an opportunity where he slides a little bit in the draft because people see the buzzy list of names who have run similar speeds in the 4.2 range, and it's Jacoby Ford and John Ross and Marquise Goodwin and these guys that didn't fare too well in their NFL careers. But Xavier Worthy is not remotely comparable to those guys. He's got much better ball skills. He's a better route runner overall. And when you start looking at the draft board, you can just keep moving him up higher and higher and higher. Now, I don't see him in that same tier as Marvin Harrison and Roma Dunze and Malik Neighbors. He's below those guys, but I could see him going as early as 21 to Miami. I think that's the best case scenario for him, but I don't think there's any chance he makes it past 32. That's probably his absolute floor. I don't think if he's on the board when Kansas City is picking, there's any chance that he makes it beyond that.
No, not after that 40-yard. And like I can see him being, like you said, in the top.
Showed out. It was fun to watch.
It was great. It was a great day to watch him. Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, he may not have risen too much, but he actually opened the eyes up for probably some of these NFL teams that were looking for speed, and he has it. Good call on that one. Who's your next one, Dave?
The other guy I want to talk about is Blake Corum. And again, maybe not a riser per se, but I think a lot of people were really scared away by his size. And he's not quite as small as some people thought. I was hearing some people say that he was going to measure in at 5'6". He measured in a hair under 5'8", but he weighed in at 205 pounds. And all the things that we thought we knew about Blake Corum, he showed us were actually true at the combine. Ran a 4.53 40, which is pretty impressive for somebody his size. But what really jumped out to me was his strength. 27 reps on the bench is crazy. Most of all the running backs, and he actually put up just as many as Joe Alt. I was looking on Player Profiler earlier today, though, and his splits from the 10-yard and the 20-yard put him in the 94th percentile for agility. And if you watch him during his drills, he's just such a fluid and natural runner. So it's hard to look at him as anything besides a riser. When I look at some people's dynasty rankings, or rookie rankings, I should say, they still have him outside the top 5. I'm in a dynasty startup right now where I got him as an RB6 off the board. I don't understand how you could put him any lower than RB3 in this class. And again, trying to look at the draft board and where you expect him to go. Man, we talked about the running back free agents a little bit earlier. Austin Eckler is going to be one of those guys. I don't expect the Chargers to bring him back with John Harbaugh in Los Angeles now, putting Blake Corum in that Austin Eckler role where we know Justin Herbert loves to check down. That would just be a fantasy dream.
I agree.
I did get to report on Blake Corum for Player Profiler News Desk. And so I watched him pretty closely, and he definitely moved up my rankings. I have him at number 4, but he definitely moved himself up. A couple of the guys that I was looking at, they didn't move. So he rose up to number 4. I wasn't really high on him just based on his injury history, coming off the injury and the lack of efficiency, the drop in efficiency that he had the last 2 years, but he definitely showed out of the combine and moved himself up.
Totally. And I like that call too. Like I definitely think that Harbaugh has his eye on him. You would think that it's either Corum or maybe Marshawn Lloyd headed to the Chargers, in my opinion. Both those guys look really good. Corum, I said about a month ago on this show, if he gets it gets with the Chargers, he's definitely my RB1 in this class because of that. His size, people are comparing him to Ray Rice, which is a nice little comparison there.
Yeah.
Very similar size and speed there. So I like that comparison. See where he goes. That landing spot. This is all
You
fluid
can say
right
that about
now.
every running back
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
class.
Yeah, this class, it's all fluid with the running backs. Until we know where they land, that's going to be a huge one.
And you can say the
Okay.
same for the free agents that we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. Like when it comes to running backs, we can talk about wide receivers, all of the nerdy efficiency metrics that make them good. But at the end of the day, running backs, it's just volume. And that's why you see these guys popping up on depth charts as 1 week spot starts where we're ranking them inside our top 10 and our top 8. It's all about volume and all about opportunity for the running backs.
Yeah, I think Damian Pierce was the perfect. Alrighty. So my first riser is Lad McConkie. Now, McConkie, everybody watched him at Georgia and said, oh, he's a really good route runner. He creates a lot of space. He's got great hands. He knows what to do. He came out and ran a 4.3940, which is pretty darn fast. At 6 foot, 186 pounds, he's slight. He's not quite that tall, but he's going to be able to move in the slot and play some outside receiver as well. Some of the metrics that I was looking for, he didn't do so well in the vertical jump. He was ranked right around the 57th percentile. Bench press was all right, 35%. It's really not good, but 13 seemed to be about average for a lot of people. Age is a big factor, and at 22, he's not exactly as old as some of the other guys that are out there. But what really sold me on Lad McConkie was when Daniel Jeremiah was on during the Combine broadcast, and he showed Lad McConkie's measurables compared to Garrett Wilson's, and they were almost exactly the same, save for some like tenths of a second on some certain things. But if you look at it on paper, they're the same person. Now, granted, there's stuff between the ears. There are differences in people rather than just their measurables. But I think Lad McConkie, with his showing, pretty close to the Offensive Rookie of the Year from 2 years ago, and Puka Nacua, who was the O'Roy last year, or runner-up as O'Roy last year. McConkie was very similar to him, especially with all the steam that he got after the Senior Bowl. So I think Lad McConkie is right in that spot where he's probably a third-tier receiver that has second-tier ability, and that definitely bore itself out at the Combine for me. So he was my first one.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think Dave, was on your show this week that you guys said that McConkie had the best gauntlet time, and that was compared to Puka last year too. So that was a very good comparison between the two guys.
Second best behind Keon Coleman.
Okay, yeah, Keon Coleman, he
but
did.
Still, and I think that's my favorite drill to watch is the gauntlet. There's running in a straight line is one thing, being agile is one thing, but being able to track a ball, catch a ball, and do all of that while you're still running at full speed. They just started implementing that data last year. It's not something that's like an official combine measurement, but they have the chips in the players now that they can track their speed. And yeah, last year's fastest runner during the gauntlet drill was Puka Nacua, and this year it was Keon Coleman and Lad McConkie.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Lot of parallels.
All right, Biggs, what do you got next?
My second one is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. He came in. He's tall, 6'3". He's another slight build, but at least he's over 205 pounds. He weighed in at 209, but his athleticism was really what kind of showed out at the Combine. A 4.3340 in the 95th percentile. His 1.5 10-yard split is right around 90th percentile. His vertical was in the 84th percentile. His broad jump was in the 81st percentile. Now, what had me watching Brian Thomas Jr. was the fact that he wasn't that alpha on his team with Malik Neighbors in front of him, but also I saw a lot of comps, a lot of similarities in the game tape to God, my brain is freezing again. We're going to need to edit some of this. Damn it. Chargers wide receiver.
Mike Williams?
Rookie last year.
Quentin Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What really got me about Brian Thomas Jr., seeing some of his tape, he reminded me a lot of Quentin Johnston, and that's not good. So I thought, here we go. We have a QJ clone, and he's going to get overdrafted and all that stuff. But he was far more athletic than Quentin Johnston was. So that's what made him a riser in my book. I definitely had him outside of the top 10, even though everybody had him as the consensus 6th or 7th wide receiver. Now I'm sold, and he's moved up into that position for me too.
I know, Dave,
he's my
you're
wide
really
receiver
high.
4.
Yeah.
He's,
I know
he's
you're
my
really
wide
high on
receiver
him.
4 in this class. I'm a big fan. I think he's got that game-breaking speed, but I'm also just the game has changed so much where we see these smaller guys doing well in football, and I get it. I love it that the way that the rules are trending allows for these guys to play at all sizes, but I'm still a sucker for that old school alpha build. And when I see Brian Thomas fits that same mold as like a T. Higgins or Nico Collins, one of those guys that can go up there and get it. He's a little thin, and I want to see him bulk up a little bit before he gets to the NFL. But I think if he can add another 10 pounds to his frame before the season kicks off, I think he's got what it takes to be that alpha wide receiver. So I'm a big fan of him. Like you said, the measurables, the athletics were off the charts. To see him bulk up a little bit so he can learn to play through contact a little bit better than he did in college. But I'm a big fan of the raw skills he's got.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, good one. All right.
How about you, Big? I don't know what is happening. My brain is totally short-circuiting. I just called you Biggs.
It's okay. It's okay. You just had a monumental birthday, and you're dealing with some stuff right now, man. It's all good. All right. So my first riser, and a lot of people, including myself, had no idea who this guy was before the combine, and that's Isaac Guerendo. And Guerendo becomes only the second player to post a 9.99 since 1997. That's a relative athletic score. The last time this was accomplished was way back in 1999 when Edgerrin James did it. Guerendo's historic day started when he posted the best vertical jump of the day of 41.5, and then he went on to post the best 40-yard dash time at 4.33 out of all the running backs, where he hit a top speed of 24 miles per hour. Guerendo joins Devon Achane and Keaton Mitchell as the only running backs to reach 24 miles per hour on the 40-yard dash over the last 2 years. Simply incredible. Guerendo is a great outside zone runner with good vision, a good pass catcher, and has a good mix of speed, and his size makes him a very intriguing prospect now that I've looked into him a little bit more, especially after crushing it at the combine. An injury-plagued 2022 season with the Badgers saw Guerendo's stock fall, and then he was transferred to Louisville in a split backfield with Jawar Jordan. He has very little wear and tear on his body. With a strong showing at the combine, he becomes one of the most intriguing prospects in this draft class, especially when you consider how wide open the running back class is. After the combine, Guerendo's stock sure skyrocketed. He could easily be chosen in the top 10 out of the running backs this year in this class with this showing.
Yeah, he was a guy that I was really. I joked on this about my show before the combine. I didn't know his name. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know every single rookie. I didn't even know who he was. So really piqued my interest. Everything you said, I think is great. I don't know if you mentioned too. He's got that 3-down size, 6 foot 221. That is a big boy to come out and be able to do what he did athletically at that size. It's really tough to ignore. I haven't had a chance to go back and dig through all of his tape yet, but yeah, definitely intriguing and somebody who has piqued my interest post-combine.
I think Guerendo is the poster boy for the shift in running back metrics at this point, or the new era in dynasty running backs. I heard about him first. Again, I can't follow absolutely everybody. I even played Devi, and I didn't know who Isaac Guerendo was, but I heard Brett Coleman talking about him. So he was definitely on my radar going into the combine, and passively his name just kept showing up everywhere. I went and I broke down the metrics of the combine results, and Isaac Guerendo he hit more of the thresholds than anybody else in the class. He had 6. I think Estime had 5. Braylon Allen had 5. Guerendo came out as the top guy. among all of the running backs that participated. Now, the problem is that the number one most important metric for fantasy success is age, and Guerendo is 24. Now, that just brings up the question, do we discount all of his athleticism? Do we discount the fact that he's bell cow size? Do we discount all of that stuff because he's older? That's what we're dealing with in fantasy at this point. And I don't know the answer to that, unfortunately. I'm going to keep an eye on him. And if I can draft him in the second round in rookie drafts, I'm absolutely going to. But I wouldn't spend first round capital on him, even though his athleticism warrants first round capital. So that age just really puts a scare into me.
And I don't even know if I'd take him in the second. I'm probably waiting until he falls into round 3 before I'm rolling the dice.
Considering some of the guys that I've gotten in the second in the last few years, I think Guerendo is a much better athlete. And but draft capital is going to have a lot to do with it. But that is changing. We don't see a lot of higher drafted running backs. It's getting harder and harder to pinpoint who's going to actually live up to expectations. And athletically, if anybody can, it's going to be Guerendo. But that age just it's such a big drawback.
Yeah, the fact that he wasn't even on any of our radars for the most part headed into the combine, and the fact that now he's one of the guys that tested the best in the last 20 years that's a riser for me, and we'll see what happens. It's such a intriguing prospect.
He was a transfer, which makes him older, but what do you do with those guys now after COVID year and all that stuff and NILs? But he wasn't even the RB1 on the Louisville team. He's a hard one, but he definitely, like, as strictly as a riser from his combine results, absolutely, he is probably the biggest one.
All right, so my next one is Adonai Mitchell, who had himself a day on Saturday running a blazing 4.3440. During the 40, he reached 23.84 miles per hour. Within the first 5 yards, 15 miles per hour. So he did that all with the size of 6'2", 205, making him one of the most intriguing prospects for me due to his size and speed. His broad jump was 11.4, which ranked number 1 out of all the wide receivers, and had a top 5 vertical as well. So he showed inconsistencies on the field Saturday as well. He still needs to work on his hands, especially in those short game areas. He ran a limited route tree as well, which he still needs time to develop at the NFL level. His body needs to fill, so it will be interesting to see if he can still be explosive at, say, 210 pounds. There are question marks about his work ethic. He admittedly not playing at full speed on every snap, just like my homeboy George Pickens. But Mitchell has a big playability and can stretch the field with the best of them in the class. He is now a big-time player, showing up in big moments, scoring 5 touchdowns in playoff games that he appeared in. He's 6'2" and is a good red zone target as well. He has the size and speed, and he's being comped with guys like Julio Jones and AJ Brown. However, Mitchell's size and speed blew the doors off of both those guys in the 40-yard dashes. So I'm pretty high on Adonai Mitchell right now. He's one of the guys that rose up my board in such a clumped wide receiver group. He showed me a lot on Saturday.
Yeah, those wide receivers out of Texas, man, they were pretty good. We might be looking at 2 of them going in the first round of this year's draft. I think the biggest takeaway, we've talked about a lot of these receivers so far, and something that everybody's talking about ad nauseum at this point, this draft class is just loaded to the gills with wide receiver. We might see 6 or 7 go in the first round.
Can you imagine if Igbuka came out and we had 2 from Ohio State, 2 from Washington, 2 from Texas, 2 from LSU? Come on, just this embarrassment of riches is that. So how does that play into running back values? If everybody's going after these wide receivers so high, fantasy numbers are fantasy numbers, and running backs aren't doing anything to help themselves out lately.
And the NFL GMs have gotten a lot smarter. Last year was maybe a little different. We saw Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson both go top 10, but that's not really the norm anymore. Yeah. Talking about realistically, you're looking at mocks now. They're saying it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks going off the board potentially. We might be looking at nothing but quarterbacks, tackles, and wide receivers and edge in the first round. I don't know if we're going to see anything outside of those 4 positions. GMs are finally getting a little bit more savvy to drafting these premium positions in the early round, and especially in what's a relatively weak running back class. We might not see any running backs going off the board until day 3.
Right. That's scary. It's a scary proposition, but not out of the question, which is crazy.
Yeah, especially like you said before, with all these free agent running backs, these veteran free agent running backs, there's no need for them to take a guy that early right now anyway. So yeah, you might be right. The first guy might be the third round, which is crazy to think about. All right, so we're gonna speed through these fallers so we can get Dave home. So let's go, Dave Kluge's fall.
First guy I want to talk about is Troy Franklin, who I think a lot of people looked at as the de facto wide receiver 4 in this class, definitely in that tier behind the big 3. And he ran a 4.41 in the 40, but I'm not going to read too much into that. We knew he was fast. Running a fast 40 is just couple counting at this point. What jumped out to me is that in the gauntlet drill and in his receiving session, he looked sloppy. He was weaving all over through the gauntlet. He bobbled one of the passes that came his way. He tripped and fell during the receiving session. It just wasn't really a great showing. Now, I think he still has all of the skills you want to see from a receiver, and he's going to get drafted in the first round because he's big and he's fast and all of that, but he might end up being a little bit more one-dimensional, just field stretcher, and I don't know what else he's going to be able to provide outside of that. He wasn't awful by any means. It's hard to talk about him as a faller, especially somebody who's probably still going to go in the first round. But like we talked about earlier, so many of these wide receivers just had fantastic showings and improved their draft stock that Troy Franklin not improving his draft stock by default is a faller.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed this pattern with University of Oregon players where there's a lot of hype and then they don't ever live up to that? Spoiler alert,
James, man, he still haunts my dreams.
Marcus Mariota, Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Justin Herbert guy. Justin Herbert was hyped, and he's hyped every year still, and it's just this University of Oregon carryover. Hashtag Go Bears.
All right, Dave, who's your next guy?
Braylon Allen has been an analytics darling, the early breakout age and all those sorts of things. And he's big and he does all that and he was productive. He opted out of a lot of the testing at the combine, and the things that he did participate in, he didn't really do as well as we had wanted to see. He was 18th out of 20 participants in the vertical jump. He was 15th out of 20 participants in the broad jump. He didn't run a 40. There were some concerns about his explosiveness, and what he needed to do is come out with a good vertical and a good broad jump to quell those concerns, and he didn't. So I'm a little bit concerned here. Looking at the tape, watching Braylon Allen, he was able to run through guys at a younger age. I don't know if that's going to translate to the NFL. There were hopes that with his size and all that, he could be a 3-down back in the NFL, but he's looking like he might just end up being a short yardage guy, which, don't get me wrong, could be good for fantasy, especially if he finds himself in a high-scoring offense and he gets a lot of goal line touches. But I just don't know if Braylon Allen really has what we want to see to be a featured premier back in the NFL.
I definitely understand that, and Braylon Allen being my number one and me not moving off that for months. It's been months. Some of the things that I was looking for him to do at the combine, he hit some of the metrics that I wanted him to hit. The two biggest things with top 12 finishes at the running back position are age and weight. He's got youngest in the class and biggest in the class. So he hits those two. His 3-cone and shuttle weren't great, but those are secondary to the top two metrics for the running back position. Now, least of which, the bottom metric is the 40 time. Even though he has clocked 40s in the past that are competitive, I still have Braylon. I'm not moving off of him. He's still going to be my number one. I'm not going to get washed by all this combine talk, and I'm going to go down with the ship for that one.
And that's
so
fair.
Check back a year from now when I'm crying in my soup about Braylon Allen.
It's a tough one to do because of that age, that size, and there's a lot of variables there. So it's an interesting prospect, and like we said, it's fluid, just like landing. Let's see where he lands. All right, Biggs.
And
You're
if he
gonna
lands
talk.
with Tennessee, where he can be the heir apparent
Yeah.
to Derrick
Yeah.
Henry, that's great. Where he's got an offensive line full of maulers that can just get holes and let him run through that. That would be a good opportunity. There's just a few red flags in his profile that jump out to me.
That wouldn't be good for my Tyjae Spears
Yeah.
shares, so I don't like that at all. All right. My first follower is Jaden Daniels. Producer's got to be quicker on the trigger. My first follower is Jaden Daniels. Now, Jaden Daniels is locked in at the QB3 in the draft class. There's talk now that he's actually better than Drake May. And I don't want to sound like I'm continuously beating this dead horse, but age is such a factor at a couple of these positions, like running back and especially quarterback, that Jaden Daniels slips a little bit for me. Now, whether that slips from the 3 spot to the other 3 spot, we're going to look at draft capital and where he goes. If he goes to Las Vegas, if they make a trade up for him and he's going to be the starter out of the gate, he's going to be a 3 for me. If he goes somewhere else where there's a quarterback competition, or they want him to have a couple years to percolate, that's not going to help his draft stock with me. Again, age is the big thing. He's not a spring chicken, and I know that his performance last year was incredible. I had him in Debbie. He tore it up, but he's on the older side. The other thing, and this is what really got me, was he didn't participate at the combine. We didn't get to see him throw. He didn't get measured. I've seen him anywhere from 189 pounds to one place has him listed around 210. He's going to get weighted his pro day. If he comes in at under 205 pounds, I don't think I'm going to draft him at all in any place but best ball. The fact that he is so skinny, he's built like a wide receiver. If he takes the punishment that he's going to take, and he's not a slider, he doesn't give himself up, he absolutely goes after plays. In Dynasty rookie drafts, I'm absolutely going to let other people take Jaden Daniels because I don't see a long career for him. It's similar to how I looked at Bryce Young last year, where I understood Bryce Young's ability. I watched him in championship games, and I watched him sling the ball and run around like Johnny Manziel and chuck it down the field for completions. But the size of that kid did not portend a good future in the NFL. If Jaden Daniels doesn't hit a good weight at his pro day, then I'm totally out on Jaden Daniels. So he was my biggest follower at the combine, just because he didn't participate. He needed to, in my eyes.
It was weird to see him opt out of the measurements. Even Caleb Williams, who sat out all of the drills and the throwing and all that, he still weighed in. It was bizarre to see Jaden Daniels sit that out.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks.
It was.
Thanks, Mike. My dog is going crazy, and so yeah, he thinks that. All right. My second follower, you guys will be familiar with this name because I talked about him last week, and I talked about him in a glowing light, and I talked about him as the number one guy that I was going to be watching at the combine to see what he did, and that is Texas Christian University running back Imani Bailey. I wanted him to do well. I wanted to see him make a case for himself at the combine, and he absolutely did nothing to help. Now, first, I want to give a shout out to our fellow writer over at the Undroppables, Joe Kuvatakis, future guest on the Fantasy Burn, so check that out. Imani Bailey came in at 22, which is fine. 202 is just a little bit above what you want, or it's right around what you want for weight. His 40 time was 4.61. Again, 40 time is not the most important thing for a running back. It's down there on the list. But there is a threshold at running back, and speed score is definitely one of those. An 89 speed score at just over 200 pounds is not it. And Imani Bailey completely took himself off my draft boards for rookie drafts this year. And after talking him up, so much. I was surprised because he was an anchor sprinter in the 4x100. So how did he have such a slow 40 time? If he has a pro day and runs a sub 4.45, I might be back on. But at this point, Amani fell out of my running back rankings for rookie drafts.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a faller for sure. All right, so we're gonna end off the show with my two fallers. Yeah.
Oh.
So Bucky Irving, he almost shouldn't have tested at this stage. He's 5'9", 192. He's hard pressed to find a team that's willing to give him more than a complimentary role at this stage. He didn't run a very good 40. Bucky projects to be nothing more than a third down back to me now. The change of pace back at his size, just like Jalen Wright, Irving needed to run a sub 4.4 to be considered a top 5 back in this class. Instead, Bucky Irving posted an unimpressive 4.55. Also, his vert was bad. Same with his broad jump, which aren't indicative of an explosive player. His 40-yard dash was not great, and I know it's not that big because you're running in a straight line, but that's a huge thing for a running back, in my opinion, to get that speed down, and especially to get that draft capital that they're looking for. So for him, it's going to be a hard road for me now to crack an NFL lineup. He's probably going to get third, maybe fourth round draft capital now, especially if these running backs aren't going to the third round. He's probably going to even slide further than that at this stage. Unfortunate, because he was a high on my prospect list going into the combine, but now he's slid right down there. So Bucky Irving is one of my first fallers.
Yeah, I think he was probably the biggest faller of all the running backs. That was a pretty brutal showing overall from Bucky Irving. Yeah. And he was a guy that a lot of people liked. Film guys liked him, numbers guys liked him. And after seeing what he did at the combine, it's really hard to keep beating that drum.
So hard. And I did an NFL mock draft with my partner over at the Undroppables Raiders Unrivaled. And we had him as a third round running back to the Raiders. I want him to get drafted by the Raiders. The Raiders are losing Amir Abdullah and Brandon Bolden, and I'm okay with them drafting Bucky Irving in the fourth round and bringing him into play that with Zamir White and Josh Jacobs. That's totally fine with me, but that's not going to do him any good in Dynasty. That's not going to do him any good in redraft leagues. He might be okay for a best, but like a last round best ball pick. But other than that, Bucky Irving had a combine that completely took him out of the picture for Dynasty and your rookie drafts this year.
Yeah. Okay. And my last faller to wrap up the show here is a similar situation to one of Dave's fallers at wide receiver. It wasn't that he did anything to improve his position. He just didn't do anything at all to improve it. So it's Keon Coleman, exceptional ex-receiver who excels in physicality and ball skills with a height of 6'4", 215. He was a wide receiver I had my eye on just because of his profile. At the combine, he ran a disappointing 4.6140, but he did run the fastest gauntlet drill, like Dave mentioned earlier. With the 40-yard was disappointing. Coleman showed he can be dangerous with the ball in his hands last season. He caught 50 passes for 658 yards and 11 touchdowns, so he is a red zone threat. He was a prospect that was consistently being drafted as a potential first-round pick, but I think that 40-yard dash might have just taken him out of that situation, especially when you think of the notable names that did show out at the combine, like Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas, even Troy Franklin, in my opinion, did more to improve their draft stock on Saturday than Coleman did. So all of these guys have surpassed him this weekend. I still love Coleman as a prospect. I think he's going to do well in the NFL because of his profile, but I just don't think he rose the board at all on Saturday at the combine. I think he fell a little bit because he didn't show out as well as some of these other guys did.
Yeah, and I think that's it. It's not that he did anything very poorly. It's just, like we said, all these other wide receivers are risers, and by default, guys who aren't rising are falling in comparison to the other guys.
That's exactly it.
And Keon Coleman might still be a first rounder. It still is possible. Like we said, there could be 6 or 7 going in the first round this year, and Keon Coleman's probably still on that bubble.
Yeah, Florida State, that's another one. Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dave Kluge, Thank you so much for joining us today on the Dynasty Pulse. Thanks for having you. You've been a great guest. Tell everybody where they can find your stuff again.
Yeah, real simple. Just follow me on Twitter at Dave Kluge, and you'll see everything I'm up to.
And thank you, Dave, for coming in and guesting on my worst show ever.
Hey, it's the day after your birthday. I wouldn't expect any less. No, it was a great show. Don't worry about anything.
Yeah, show was great. I just wasn't. Thank you, Dave Kluge, for coming in. Subscribe, comment, share, get the algorithm going. Everything on Fantasy Football Plus is great. Find me at Big Boned FFB on Twitter. Search the Fantasy Burn on YouTube. Go to the Undroppables. Find my Devy content on the website. Find my Raiders Unrivaled content at the Undroppables YouTube channel. Go to Player Profiler and go to the Player Profiler news, because we keep updating everything that happens with all of the players, and our Dynasty package is phenomenal. So hit up Player Profiler, follow Player Profiler news on YouTube. That's all of the places that you can find me. How about you, Mike? I'll let you take this one.
Okay, thanks, Biggs, for that one. Same idea. I work for the Player Profiler news desk as well, so you can find my stuff there. Obviously, the Pulse, that's where we are. And I'm also with the Undroppables too, and I'm pounding out some NFL team-specific content with them as well. That's it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the Dynasty Pulse. Hope everybody wins. For all of us here, have a great night.
I hope you win.